Hey guys, it is Christina here for session 2 of the taster for the naturopathic life, or the natural path life. Natural path membership. Holy dooly. I've changed the name, so of course it's stuck in my head as one way, and now it's retraining myself to do it in another way. So welcome back. Last night we talked about dental health, and there is some beautiful information there. It will remain up until Friday. So if you haven't watched it already, you've got until Friday to go and watch that session that I did last night on dental health and some of the things that you can do to naturally support your health of your dental hygiene, as well as the orifice of your mouth. So tonight what we're going to talk about is a beautiful herb called Echinacea. So for me, I picked Echinacea to go along with the dental masterclass simply because Echinacea is a beautiful, well-rounded herb, and one of the amazing things you can use Echinacea for is creating a mouthwash that actually is very good at helping to support the good bacteria in the mouth, get rid of some of the pathogenic bacteria of the mouth, but also helps to protect against dental cavities. So Echinacea is one of my favorite herbs. I use it a lot because it has all these beautiful things, and one of which is immune modulation. So if you've not yet looked at Echinacea, totally have a look at it. It tends to get a little bit of a buzz around the immune system, and that's because it is a foundational herb when it comes to working with the immune system. So like I said, Echinacea is an immune modulator, which is one of the beautiful things about using Echinacea. It's not there to just boost your immune system, and it's not there to just suppress your immune system. It actually does both of those. So it will lift the immune system when it's under functioning, and it will lower the immune system when it's over functioning, which is some of the interesting conversations around Echinacea, because for those who don't fully understand the plant and they just think of Echinacea as an immune booster, the conversation is, well, then it causes autoimmune disease, because if we boost the immune system, it's going to be overactive. And that's just simply not the truth when it comes to Echinacea, because Echinacea is a modulator. It's really there to support keeping the immune system functioning well. So when it is low in the situations of a cold or flu, when your immune system is working really hard and it needs more support, it's going to help lift that immune system and help it do those things that it needs to do. But the same is true when you've got an over-functioning immune system. So in the cases of autoimmune conditions, Echinacea does that beautiful job of modulation. So when the immune system is over-functioning, like it might be in the case of an autoimmune condition, it helps to lower the immune system. So brings it back into an even keel, which is one of the beautiful things that I love about Echinacea, that it has that modulation sort of process with it, where it does the lifting when it needs to, and it does the calming down when it needs to as well. So if you see me looking off to the corner, that's because that's where my notes are, and I want to make sure that I say everything that I want to say about Echinacea. Echinacea tends to be one of the herbs that I use quite a lot in my own clinical practice when I'm creating herbal formulas for people. I tend to use it quite a bit, simply because of it does that job. It does the lifting and it does the lowering when it needs to do those things. It also has some beautiful anti-inflammatory properties. So when there's inflammation, it helps to reduce that inflammation. And of course, when we're talking about inflammation, and this for me is some of the stuff that I really nerd out about when it comes to herbs and when it comes to utilizing herbs for different roles, we think of inflammation as always bad, and inflammation does have some negative connotations, but actually inflammation also has some really good ones as well. So it just depends on how that inflammation takes place. So for example, when you have twisted your ankle, your body inflames the area, and it does that so that it can bring in all of the nutrients that it needs to in order to do the repair and to get rid of any of the waste products and get rid of any of the other stuff that it was needed in that moment of acute care for that ankle. Let's say you've twisted the ankle and that's what's caused the inflammation. It does the ballooning, so it causes inflammation, and then as that waste product starts to dispensate and go away, then it's meant to come down. But in the case of chronic health conditions, what happens is that person is in a state of chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation doesn't do as much of the job as when you've got that acute inflammation. So acute inflammation, you've twisted your ankle, it's blown out, fluid has come into there, it's doing that job, it's creating space and pathways for things to move in and out in order to repair that damage. In a body who is chronically inflamed, the body is consistently carrying inflammation, and that inflammation can be quite challenging for the body. It's not necessarily being helpful to them. It causes lots of pain, especially some chronic underlying pain for the person that's experiencing it over a really long period of time, and that is inflammation that we want to actually help to reduce and remove. And there's a whole bunch of ways that we do that. Dietary definitely has to be a part of that role. We also look at hydration, minerals, all of those types of things, but then we also may use some beautiful herbs to help us with that chronic inflammation, and Echinacea is one of those herbs that we can use for helping to support the movement of chronic inflammation, also reducing things like infections and clogging of the lymphatic system while we're experiencing that inflammation, because it is anti-infective. So while we know that it does this immune modulation, it does the anti-inflammatory, it also helps to limit and reduce infections, which is why it's also really beautiful when it comes to using it as a mouthwash for after you've brushed your teeth, to help to make sure, especially if you have periodontal disease, to keep the area clean, to help reduce infections that take hold. And when we're looking at things like periodontal disease, that's what we're looking at. We're looking at bacteria that is often thriving and teeming in the mouth. And so again, Echinacea used as a mouthwash can be really effective at helping to reduce and prevent further damage when it comes to periodontal disease, but also cavities as well. And so if you haven't yet heard of Echinacea as a mouthwash, Google it. You'll find a recipe, I'm sure, and you can have a go at making it. In the Natural Path membership, there is a recipe and instructions on how to make it at home. I don't necessarily have the space here to actually teach you that, which is why I created the Natural Path membership, because there are things that in there that I can teach you that I can't teach in this kind of platform and this space openly. So you can always Google it though. I think there is plenty of recipes on how to make an Echinacea mouthwash. So that's going to be really good for things like periodontal disease and preventing gingivitis and actually helping to reduce teeth cavities. Another one of Echinacea's actions is its antiviral. So when we have colds and flus, this is where Echinacea can be really beautiful, because it is antiviral. It helps to support the body when it has been attacked by a virus. And so you can be using it, especially as we're starting to come up to winter. We're starting to get these changes in the season, and we actually see quite a lot of colds and flus in autumn and in spring, simply because we get really quick changes in the weather that we're experiencing, and that then can lead to us getting overly hot and getting overly cold and really going hot, cold, and that then can leave us open to capturing some of the viruses that are taking place. My goodness, my household is getting really noisy. I hope it's not too noisy. Give me a second. Ben! My goodness, they just got out of the bath. So, nut shows. Okay, so I've mentioned the immune modulation factors of Echinacea. Lymphatic, this is where Echinacea comes in handy when we're looking at things like chronic illness. When we're looking at chronic inflammation, we're looking at chronic illness, it helps to support that lymphatic system. And remember, our lymphatic system is one of the pathways of the immune system. So the lymphatic system is often used in order to get the immune system cells to where we need them to go. So the white blood cells, etc. It can be used to help clear out the gunk of the blood, but it also is a pathway for the immune system. So making sure that our lymphatic system is working really well and is nice and clean and clear also helps to promote a really good functional immune system. And so Echinacea is one of those herbs that can help you with that as well. And then Echinacea is also really good at wound healing. Now, we don't often think about Echinacea for wound healing. We think about other plants for wound healing, but Echinacea itself is actually really good for it. And using Echinacea as a tincture on a wound that needs to be cleaned can be really helpful for that as well. So, some of the indications for Echinacea are infection, inflammation, swollen glands, acne. You can use Echinacea tincture on skin that has got acne on it as well. So as well as taking it internally, applying it externally like a cleanser can be really helpful at actually cleaning up infected acne. Colds and flus, of course, low immune system, overactive immune system, so autoimmune conditions. Thrush, skin infections, you can apply it directly to the skin infection. You can also take it internally as well. Post-viral fatigue, which I've been seeing quite a bit of recently, where people have had a virus and now they've got chronic fatigue type symptoms after that. And of course, it's a blood cleaner and a wound healer, and it helps to support dental carriers. So meaning that it's going to help to keep your gums and your teeth nice and clean and clear so that we have less infections, less tooth decay, all of that type of stuff. So it would be remiss of me not to mention some of the contraindications for Echinacea. It's generally considered a reasonably safe plant, which is why it has been used for so long throughout history. But there are some people that are allergic to Echinacea. So of course, if you're allergic to Echinacea or any of the plants in its family, the Astraceae family, those are things like chamomile, what else have I got here? Ragweed. They all kind of belong to the same family. So if you have allergens to that family of plants, then that's contraindication. It's also a contraindication to use Echinacea when you're using immunosuppressant drugs. And in that case, you always want to make sure that you're checking with a health practitioner, especially a herbalist who knows what they're talking about when it comes to the contraindications, and you want to be under the care of someone for that, just to make sure that it's actually suitable for you, as well as the medication that you're actually on. And if you are on medication, definitely go and check with a herbalist. I'm a herbalist, but also go check with, somebody local as well about whether this is going to be appropriate with the medication and the conditions that you've currently got. Don't just start using something, because that's when people often have some problems when it comes to herbal therapies, is that they just start using it. They don't yet have sufficient knowledge to understand the physiology of the actual condition, but also the way that the plant works as well. So it's really wise to just get some support and get some help. And that's when sometimes a question and answers session with me is really good. So make sure if you haven't booked in for the question and answers on Wednesday, please go ahead and make sure you've registered, because you need to register in order to be able to use the link. And I'm happy to answer any questions in that space. So it's a free-for-all. Just ask whatever it is that you need to ask, and I'm happy to answer it as best I possibly can in that space. Okay, so like I said, Echinacea tends to be one of my favorite herbs. It's not my favorite because there are multiple ones. It's kind of like, how do you pick which daughter is your favorite? Like, there's loads of them, and they've got lots of different benefits, but it's certainly within my top 10 of herbs that I have in my home for my own family, and ones that I use really, really regularly for my own patients because of how beautiful it is. And remembering that as a herbalist, I'm looking at the synergy of herbs. I'm looking at Echinacea as one of the core group of herbs that I might use for somebody who has got a health condition. And then on top of it, I'm going to add some really specific herbs that go with that person and that condition. So for example, let's say it was an autoimmune condition. Let's say it's endometriosis. I might use Echinacea as one of my core herbs because of its immune modulating benefits, its lymphatic benefits, and its anti-inflammatory benefits. But then I'm also going to add in some herbs that are really specific for that condition. So I might then be looking at chase tree, I might be looking at Chisandra, I might be looking at dandelion or burdock root, or some other liver herbs might be in that process. I might even look at things like blue flag that are going to do things like helps again support that lymphatic system. I might look at a whole range of them depending on the person. I'm also likely to be looking at things like some gut health herbs too, like fringe tree, ginger, those beautiful ones to actually help make sure that the gut is working really well, the detoxification pathways are working well, the hormones are working well, and echinacea with the immune system, making sure that that's working really well. So as a herbalist, that's how I think when I start to put together a herbal formula for my clients. What are the core things that they need? And in that scenario, immune modulation is one of them. And then we're going to look at the other specifics that are going to help. And together, synergistically, they do this beautiful dance where they create these amazing outcomes and really help support people in that way of getting beautiful health. Now, one of the other things that I want to mention when I talk about herbs is that we think about them like we do medicine. So in the sense that we take this drug for this specific thing. Now, herbs aren't just like that, in the sense that, you know, many practitioners are being taught to function that way, but actually herbs have this synergistic power where 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. 1 + 1 often equals 4 or 8, simply because them working together creates a really amazing results in this synergy. The other aspect that we tend to forget when it comes to using herbs is that they all have nutritional benefit as well. So each herb also has within it some vitamins and minerals that are also really great for us. So from that perspective, I will often use herbs from a nutritional point of view as well. And echinacea is a beautiful herb that contains some B vitamins in it. It also contains some other things like caffeinates and some polysaccharides, etc., which also increase our white blood cell count, aids it aids in the destruction of unwanted bacterial, fungus, and viruses. So it does all these beautiful things, not just because it's echinacea, but because the echinacea itself also contains some nutrients that are helpful for our body as well. So this is one of the beautiful aspects that I wanted to mention about echinacea, is that the way echinacea works with the immune system is different to the way, say, an antibacterial or an antibiotic might actually work in regards to killing off bacteria. So what you might take an antibiotic to kill bacteria. The way echinacea works is instead of killing the bacteria, it's actually supporting your own immune system to fight off that bacteria, which helps your immune system become stronger, because it's not destroying your microbiome, it's actually lifting up your own immune system, which then means that your immune system is going to create more of those antigens, and it's going to have them ready on hand in order to be able to fight that thing when it comes again. So it's not breaking down stuff, it's actually building it up, and it's doing this beautiful job because of all the actions that it actually has as well. Of course, echinacea is one of the most famous herbs used for things like colds and flus. There has been some studies that have shown that it helps to reduce colds and flus, as well as lessens the incidence of respiratory infections. So when we're thinking about a cold and flu and we're thinking about it being dangerous, what we're thinking about is not necessarily the cold or the flu itself, it's the secondary infections that people often get when they have a cold or flu. So if they've got a cold or a flu and they've got an unproductive cough and they're not able to get the mucus out of their lungs, they're not able to shift things around, then they're more likely to have a buildup of fluid in their lungs because they're not being productive in actually releasing that and getting that out of their lungs. And so in that case, you're more likely to develop things like bronchitis, pneumonia, those types of conditions, which are the ones that tend to be more dangerous when it comes to that cold and flu. It's often not the cold or the flu itself that's causing the problem. Often it's the pneumonia or the other bacterial infections that you might have gotten from having things like an unproductive cough, from not being able to get that immune system up and running. And so that's where echinacea can be really beautiful, especially if you're just using it in that cough and cold. It can stop those secondary infections if you're onto it quick enough. One of the problems, again, when it comes to sorry. One of the problems when it comes to alternative medicine and natural medicine is the fact that people tend to wait until after they've already got the condition to then start doing it. It's not until they're like, oh, this cough is not going away for them to start to go and then start to look at vitamin C and echinacea and elderberry and all of those types of things. It's because there's that delay that people often have, it's much slower at actually being able to help them. Whereas if you know that you've got a cold and flu, or you're just starting with a bit of a sniffle, taking some echinacea at the start of that cold or flu, that sniffle, is actually going to be helpful in actually being protective and lifting that immune system instead of waiting until it gets too bad and it's not going to be able to be helpful at that point in time. So having these things on hand before you need them is really one of the keys when it comes to trying to protect yourself and keep yourself healthy and well without needing to use some pharmaceutical drugs. And that's not to say that you shouldn't ever use those things, but if we reduce the amount that we use them, we limit the amount that we use them, we only use them when they're absolutely necessary, they actually work really effectively for us. If we're using them all of the time, our body's desensitized to them. They aren't as effective for us, and we have to use higher doses and much stronger ones in order to be able to get the same results. So if we can implement things like echinacea, vitamin C, elderberries, all of those types of things in place of going straight for the pharmaceutical drug, we're more likely to not need that drug in the first place. And if we do need it, we're more likely to be more sensitive to it and it actually being effective for us. So that's something to think about when it comes to colds and flus. And when we're looking at herbs like echinacea, having them on hand when we need them is the way to go. Now, from my perspective as a herbalist, I can tell you that the best way to have echinacea, of course, is in tincture form or extract form. That is the strongest. It's when we have the most active constituents that are bioavailable to us. However, not everybody likes the flavor of them, and of course they don't taste that nice. The old saying of Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps the medicine go down, that was in the day when they were using a lot more herbal medicine, and that spoonful of sugar made it easier to be able to take the bitter taste of some of these herbs. So some people will want to use it as a tablet. The tablet is probably one of the least effective ways, but it is easier to get in. And then of course we've got tea, and echinacea itself doesn't taste very nice. So for me, when I'm making a herbal tea with a plant that doesn't taste very nice, I'll generally mix it with herbs that do taste really nice. So things like rose hips are a really good companion. Hibiscus is another really good companion. So rose hips brings some vitamin C to the table. Hibiscus brings some beautiful multivitamins. So it has a whole range of different nutrients in it, and it's this beautiful multivitamin. So when I'm making echinacea for my own family, I'm generally pairing it with some rose hips, some hibiscus, and I might even put some blackberry in there as well, just to make it tasty so that they'll be able to consume it happily in a tea form, and then they're getting all the beautiful benefits of those plants as well. Blackberries, for example, are really fantastic from a nutrient point of view, especially when they're wild, because they have these really long tap roots. They burrow right down into as deep as they can go, and they bring those nutrients up with them. They bring it up through their leaves and into their flat plants as well. So blackberry is one of those beautiful ones that you can actually use as well. The other thing that echinacea is not typically known for, but is absolutely beautiful for, and that is both internally and topically. So echinacea helps to clean and clear skin wounds, acne infections such as ringworm, impetigo and thrush, so it can be useful for that as well. And you can make a paste from the root of the echinacea with some water. So you would, if you've got some dried echinacea and you've got a Thermomix, you just grind it up. If you don't have a Thermomix, you can do this in a coffee grinder as well. You put your dried echinacea in there, you turn it into a powder, you add enough water to make it into a paste, and then you can put that on the skin directly. Put something over it to cover it and keep it there so that it doesn't get all wet and manky and dirty. It's going to be yuck if you're touching it all over clothes. So covering it with something, and then of course cleaning and clearing that every day. You'll find that those those wounds actually repair a lot quicker, and that's because that echinacea is working on site. Yeah, and the other way you could do that is if you've got echinacea tincture, you can put that onto some gauze. So you would dilute it a little bit, put that onto some gauze, put the gauze on the wound, and then of course put something over the top of that as well. Those are some of the ways that you can use echinacea. Again, it's one of the favorite ones that I have. I always have it in my household. I put echinacea in things like my broth. So if I'm making a good herbal broth, I'm going to add some echinacea and a bunch of other herbs into that broth. I will add it into things like kombucha and let it ferment in that kombucha along with some flavorings. Like, I'm not doing that on its own because it's not going to taste so great, so that we can extract the herbal benefits out of it and we can get that into our kombucha. I can use it in all sorts of different ways. So think outside of the box when it comes to using some of these herbs. Start by getting them in your home. If you buy some echinacea, then actually make yourself some tea. Just a plain echinacea tea so that you can taste it and pay attention to what it does to your body, like what sensations you feel when you're drinking it. Even that yuck taste that we have where we go, ugh, that also is really helpful to us. It actually stimulates our vagus nerve and helps it to become more active and more productive in what we need it to do. And so there's all sorts of benefits around things like echinacea, but start by getting some dried herb, making a tea, tasting it, seeing what it tastes like for you. For some people, I've heard they love it. Majority of people I know don't actually like the flavor of it. And then have a play with it. Remember when you were a kid and you might have got things out of the garden like some flowers and some leaves and put it in a cup and a water and put some dirt in there and you mixed it around and you had pretend cups of teas or stews or whatever it is that you were pretending to make. Well, now you get to play that as a grown-up. Now you get to actually get some of these beautiful herbs that I've mentioned tonight, put them in, taste them, see what they feel like, see how they feel in your body. Make up some mixes and have some fun playing and experimenting with some flavors, because you might actually find that there's some really beautiful ones that you love. Another one that I love to add into some of my echinacea teas is some chrysanthemum and some citrus. So generally orange peels are a really good one as well. And you certainly could be adding things like nutmeg and cinnamon and so on to make it a little bit more Christmassy flavoring or along that way. You can change this to however you like. So there is a way to get it in. It's just a matter of finding it. All right, if you have any questions about echinacea, I would happily answer them. Put them below and I'll come back and check out the comments later. And otherwise, if you want to come and join me for more of this type of teaching and learning, then come and join me in the Natural Path membership. I'll be putting up the link in the comments later today for you to come and join me over there if you want to. Every month we do either a herbal or a nutritional spotlight. So we get to learn more about herbs, what are nutrients and how to get them out of food, etc. Every month, so that you can learn to take a step-by-step approach to becoming the herbalist, the naturopath, the whatever it is, the alternative medicine practitioner living in your home, taking care of your own family. All right, that's it for me tonight. Hope you have the most amazing evening ever, and hopefully my kids will get to bed now. All right, bye for now. See you next time. See you later.